Hi, welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is why I disagree with everybody. I'm removing the item myself. So it's a little bit of different, but it's a continuation of why I disagree with everybody and myself. Non-final, and I can only call it part 2. Well, we had the recent withdrawal of Russian troops from Kherson city itself and the surrounding area. And I did a video about that, but my friend Saul sent me a link to a podcast or a live broadcast of Gonzales Lira. And he was talking to Andrei Martyanov and Brian Berletic, and I did watch it. And while he suggested, while other Russians going to drown the Ukrainian troops now, which is probably a joke, but in any case, I will continue about my discussion about Kherson, and I will also state that I cannot agree with either Andrei's or Brian's assessment of the situation, and why I still disagree with him, as I've been disagreeing with multiple pro-Russian commentators. And the reason is why is that the same narrative is again presented by these two guys. It doesn't seem to me that they are changing their narratives or their views, and they are stuck in the same loop as the pro-Western narratives or commentators are saying. It's just that they don't consider any new developments on the ground, and they forgot a lot of, call it facts, that they forget to talk about or to consider. Now, the specific example I would mention here is that Andrei actually says that, yes, well, the Ukrainian troops are about 50 kilometers away from the front now, and now they have to approach the front, and the area is flat, and the Russians are going to bombard them as they progress to the new front. Well, firstly, the Ukrainians have massed troops on the front. The Russians are supposed to know where they are. They should have attacked them with either aircraft or aviation bombs and so on, or with long-distance precision ammunition. Well, have they done it? If you look at the daily reports of the Russian Ministry of Defense, then you will find that they did attack certain areas and that they killed so many type of Ukrainians. But whether they are 50 kilometers away or now 50 kilometers nearer, doesn't matter. They do still approach. They still do attack the Russian front lines. So nothing has changed. It's just a matter of, call it global coordinates. But again, what I'm trying to say is to present, I would call it, the situation on the ground has changed. And if you argue that the Ukrainians now have to progress over flatlands of 50 kilometers, and then they have to enter Kherson city, just remember, this is now Russian territory. And the Russians have to attack Kherson city again, and they have to move over the same 50 kilometers of flat land where the Ukrainians can attack them. It's a matter of, a half full glass of wine or a half empty glass of wine. It's the same thing, it's just different wording. And because it is Russian soil now, by the Constitution of Russia, the Russian troops have to attack the Ukrainians. They have to expel them from Kherson city. So they have to cross the same obstacles that Andrei now says, well, the Ukrainians have to do, and they're going to be bombarded, and wow, they're going to be destroyed, and no. How empty, how full, same thing. Just different wording. So it's not a benefit of or a hell of a disadvantage for the Ukrainians only. It's going to be a disadvantage for Russia as well, and that is what I argued in my previous video. Now the Ukrainian troops are going to occupy Kherson. They're going to put up defensive position on that. And what do the Russians have to do? They have to slowly enter the city and then bomb the city by destroying it, just like they have to do in Mariupol. And then what is going to remain out of Kherson city itself? And that is why what I stated in my previous video, this was a bad military decision. What you should have done is rather stuck to your guns. And if you were afraid that the Ukrainians will bomb and destroy the dam and then flood the whole area, then you should have threatened them back, or you should have started to threaten them by carpet bombing Kiev, making the price that they will pay for this huge, enormous. But the Russians never made that threat. They actually withdraw, not based on an attack, but based on a threat. And as I stated in my previous video, the Ukrainians have the full capability of destroying that dam because they have precision ammunition and missiles, and they have shown that they can use this precision ammunition or missiles by attacking civilian columns. It's again, this is, Andrei likes to do that. He likes to say that if you don't have a degree in military strategy, then you know nothing. When you don't have the necessary qualification, you know nothing. And he considers the Western pundits as idiots. And he considers the Western and even the Ukrainian commanders of being idiots and incompetent. Well, that is an underestimating of your enemy, and they are not dumb. The Ukrainian military command is not idiots. They are not dumb. If you argue that the Ukrainians are Russians, well, then you are actually degrading the Russian-Ukrainian commanders, which are supposed to be idiots compared to the Russian commanders on the Russian side of the I call it the line of contact. How does that work? So just because you're on the other side, you're an idiot and you don't know what you're doing. No. Doesn't work like that. And then sometimes they make statements that the best trained men of the Ukrainians army has been destroyed. Where is that evidence coming from? There is no evidence for this assessment. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. There were talks that the Ukrainians were forcing in untrained, unqualified, incompetent soldiers to the front, which they have gathered during their second and third and fourth of mobilization. I think they are currently at 8. Who said that? Who can confirm that? Why would they sometimes use their best troops? Not trained. So basically these statements are unfounded, unsupported, unverified. Then you look at the equipment that is, well, they make a statement, Ukrainian forces are running out of equipment. Yeah, right. I mean, again, using the Russian military defense daily reports, every single day they report they destroyed another couple of tanks and APCs. But you get an artillery piece. But you can even, you can question that, but that's not the most prominent item. What the Russian defense report always says that every second day they shoot down another Su-24, 25, or MiG-29 or whatever. Hell, as far as I know, the total numbers presented are far exceed what the Ukrainian army had before they even started the SMO. And how is that possible? Who's lying here? Who is presenting false facts? I'm sorry to say. It doesn't make sense. Now, I'm an engineer by profession. It doesn't make me incompetent to analyze the facts or not to understand anything about logistical planning or whatever. And Andrei likes to call what strategic and operational realities. That's what he likes to always say. Come on. As an engineer, I can see that because we run projects, we plan for projects, and we have timelines, and we look at every single aspects, and we look at variations, and it doesn't make me incompetent as a military analyst. I can see the facts on the ground, and I can interpret it from. And on top of that, I was in the army, and I like military aspects. And I have done the research on the weapons that are being used. And I was still planning on doing it, and I'm busy with that and so on. But just, one of the things I never could understand is, why is Donetsk city still being bombarded? Why? Why hasn't the Russians stopped that? Well, it's not that easy. Donetsk is very near to the contact line. Probably like 5 kilometers. So they are vulnerable. Why did the Russians try to clear that area? I am not totally sure. But then we look at a thing what I actually want to talk about, the anti-battery radars. With this radar, they are supposed to be able to pinpoint where the enemy's radars are, and then they would sort of retaliate on that matter. While looking at the spec, the capability to detect radar is limited to 25 kilometers. But artillery pieces, the maximum range for a standard round of a 155 is about 130 kilometers. And if you put on a base bleed or you put on a rocket-assisted artillery, you can go up to 45 kilometers. That's outside the range of these artillery radars. So you cannot pinpoint them. It's very difficult. And just remember, it is a radial 25 kilometers. It is not a straight line. So if you really want to do it, then you have to have multiple of these anti-artillery radars, all in line with their radial areas of coverages overlapping, and then you can determine where the artillery comes from. And then we look at what they can do is they can determine missile launches, like the multiple rocket launches, about till a distance of 40 kilometers. But the HIMARS they can shoot further than 40 kilometers. And again, it's a radial 40 kilometers. So as you can see, looking at maps, looking at what you think our battle should be operated, how you think it should be done and so on, it's vastly devoid, different from reality. And then you even have to think about how you're going to place your artillery. You cannot place your artillery on the contact line. You have to put it a little bit backwards. But a contact line is also not a straight line. You concentrate your forces where your enemy has concentrated its forces. So it's not you run artillery and they all run along a one line. It doesn't work like that. So the question again is, if you're a commander, which I always encourage you to do, you are a Russian or a Ukrainian commander, and you have a company or battalion under yourself, underneath, and you have artillery, and you have multiple rocket launchers, and how are you going to place your assets? How are you going to attack the enemy? How are you going to approach the enemy? How are you going to send your tanks and your APCs? That's no easy task. It's not a theoretically exercise. It's a question of tactics. It's a question of who has the better tactics, who has a better positioning of their assets. How much information does everybody has? How good do you simulate? Simulate? No, that's the wrong word. How do you picture? How do you form the puzzle with that information? How good is your puzzle? There are so many factors that play a role. It's not a straightforward, we on this side, we have a trench here and you have a trench there, and then we shoot on each other like in the Second World War, or stand in a line like in the 1700s and 50 meters apart, and we shoot each other and then see, because the bullets were so inaccurate, you will hope that the guy will miss you. No, it's not the same. And the question is, and then they make the statements that, you know, the Ukrainians have the S-300 system, but they're all destroyed. There's no information for that. No way. And the S-300 is used for anti-aircraft, maybe for cruise missiles of a significant size, but it's sort of value against value. If it's a smaller size cruise missiles or a drone and so on that you can shoot off with a smaller rocket, then you do that. And that is where the NASAMS comes in, which I have made a video about. And what is the range of these things? 30 kilometers. How much do they cost? They cost $100,000 each rocket. So you're going to use $100,000 rand dollar rocket to shoot down a $20,000 rand dollar. No, that's rand. South African rand. $20,000, a $4,000 type of drone. No, you would rather use something like anti-aircraft guns. And we talked about the Gepard, the German one. But your Polish ones have developed their own system, so they have their own anti-aircraft gun system, mobile. So at the end of the day, in order to identify your targets, currently the most effective ones are drones, satellite images, and electronic, I wouldn't say countermeasures, but it will fall electronic intelligence gathering, if that's better description. And the Russians do have that. And I'm sure that the Ukrainians also have that. Whether it's Soviet era or whether it's NATO versions. But that's about it. And that is why Donetsk is still being bombarded. And what I understand is that the Russian command has admitted that only 80% of the HIMARS are being shot down. So 20% of the HIMARS missiles still reach their target. Yes, that's a very high number of success. Don't underestimate it. It is. But again, coming back to the story about what Andrei and Brian had said. The continuation of this narrative that everybody is idiots, Ukrainians have run out of ammo, they have run out of weapons, they have run out of men. The Russians are superior, and they're going to recover the area, and etc., etc., etc. Please change it. Consider the facts on the ground. See retreat in there. It's like what my friend has said, and I said it many times in the video. It's like, he argued that the Russians, if there's a chessboard, the Russians will put 10,000 men on the board and ask the opposite to put 10,000 men on the board. And the Russians will be prepared to sacrifice those tens because land is bought in blood. That is always his argument. Well, what was the reason why the Russians withdrew now at Kherson? Well, they withdrew because they were not prepared to sacrifice the 10,000 men. So they have the same problem as NATO has. NATO cannot afford body bags, and it seems to me the Russians don't want to cannot afford the Russian back. If you assume, and that is a general number that is being produced, and if you think about it, Ukraine had 8 mobilization efforts. The initial force of 200,000 men has now increased to 700,000 men. The bottom line, Eric, is that if you lose 300 men or 400 men, doesn't mean they have all been killed. In a Russian, the Russian attack on the Pavlovka city, they lost about 300 men, but only 59 men, soldiers were killed. The rest were wounded. So again, numbers can be very deceiving. Yes, it's a hell of a lot of lives. It is a sad that men have to die. It's not something that I sort of support and so on. For me, there should have been long-term peace. But things are what they are, and you cannot deny that. And sometimes you have to hit the bully on the nose, even if he pummels you, but putting a warning and telling that the price is getting high. But anyway, so what's the way forward? So what's Russia going to do? So there was a guest, not a guest, one of Gonzales' patrons that came on and asked a question. But he asked the question that say the Russians must move into the center, the south of Kharkiv, or maybe in the north, and then progress, and then basically cut off the supply lines from the Polish. What it maybe meant is that he might say the Russians will attack, say in that sub-regional area, and then go from the north of this reservoir, and then try to attack or cut the Ukrainians in the rear, in the Kherson area, or maybe they will cut off their supply lines. Well, if they do that, then we're going to have another Mariupol type of siege, and we all know what happened to that. A significant destruction of the city. But then there's another problem. Is that if you want to go around the reservoir, you have to go through Pavlovka and Ugladere and so on. And then you're going to have some resistance there. And if you want to go a little bit north, then you have to go to Bakhmut. But the progress of the Russian forces in Bakhmut has basically also come to a halt. And the Ukrainians have amassed some more troops, or moved some more troops to that region. And they withdrew it from the northern, I think it's Kupiansk area. Well, nothing is as simple as it seems. Fighting any battle is not that easy. Like I said, we're not standing in each of the trenches. In any case, so another thing is that another guest or question was asked to Brian, and he said, but why is Russia still allowing that Donetsk is being bombarded daily? And then Brian said, yeah, but it's all the fortification in that area. But to be honest, I don't really know. I don't know why the Russians tolerate this type of thing and why they haven't tried to stop this bombardment. But if you look at the map, there are fairly some smaller towns where they could hide. But also Donetsk is basically on the contact line, or very near to it. But again, so Brian says that this, all the fortification was erected, and this is one of the most fortified areas and so on. And it's very difficult for the Russians to penetrate that fortifications. But then, you know, a simple Google search for modern fortification principles and so on, then you will find out through numerous articles that fortifications is a thing of the past. Very few fortifications, unless they are deep underground or deep into the mountain, are vulnerable by various ammunitions of either NATO or the Russians. You know, when I actually started watching this war, and when I watched some images and the military summary channels and so on, and you know, he also tries to always what the Russians can do and how they can move the forces. I'm sorry, I can't even really agree with that, because it's not that simple. We don't have all the facts, and it's all speculation, but that's not the point. The point is I saw a lot of trenches being dug. You know, normal trenches for soldiers. Even we can see some of the fighting and skirmishes between Ukrainian and Russian soldiers in the trenches. And unfortunately, I do not understand that. If I remember correctly, during the Afghan war and so on, the Afghan soldiers also dug a lot of trenches and so on. And then the B-52 or whatever bombers came and dropped a lot of daisy cutters, and I understand a daisy cutter is something like similar to a thermobaric type of bomb, but I speak under correction. And then they all were annihilated. That's it. Clear the trenches. Same happened in the first Iraqi war, Gulf War. So trenches, in my opinion, are meaningless if you have the necessary weapons to suck the air out of those guys' lungs and kill them by indirect means. But then, hell, what the hell do I know in any case? I am not in command of these guys. I don't know all the other factors that are involved, but the questions do arise. Why are there even still trenches? What fortifications are really so impenetrable that the Ukrainians have arisen it? A cement bunker. There are bunker busters, bombs, there are bunker busters, shoulder-launched missiles, you know, like even an RPG-7, well, not the 7 version, the later versions, but they have bunker busting type of ammunition that can penetrate deep into concrete structures. We South Africans have it. We have it, and surely the Russians must have it. So there's a lot of things I do not understand. And somebody might maybe help me or make their videos of their own that we can have a look at it. But what the other guys are talking, the pro-Russian commentators, please open your eyes. Things are changing. And currently it doesn't look all the better. And losing territory is not a small thing. You have to retake that territory. And that means an offense. And if you do offense, you're going to lose more men than if you had a defensive position. Those are the rules of war. And if you occupy the city very easily at the beginning of the SMO, and then now you give it as a present to the enemy, and now he's going to fortify it, and now you have to do street battle fights to recover it, and thereby destroying the city. Those are not good military decisions. Doesn't matter how you look at it. You can put as much sugar on it as what you want. The fact still remains. You have to retake it under all circumstances in the future. My friend actually told me, we have sort of a, no, not a sideline bet, but we sometimes talk about. He said, if Russia doesn't retake Kherson by end of January, then that's it. He won't be able to retake it. So let's see what he says and how he predicted it. He's also pro-Russian, so make no mistake. But let's see how it goes. It is not, things are changing. And as I've mentioned in my previous video, this is not an isolated incident. The Russians have to win. It's pure logic in any case, because they have a huge amount of resources in terms of soldiers and military equipment, armament, technology, you name it, they have to win. It's like David against Goliath. You cannot deny that. So even if the Ukrainians gain some territory, it's not the end of the world. But how high will the price be for the Russians to recover that territory? That is the question. How much will they pay in terms of lives and equipment? And then they also talked about the NATO troops that are stationed in Romania and Poland and so on. Like Andrei said, and I have to fully agree, those are non-events. Will they occupy northern Ukraine? Maybe, but only at a very later stage. Will the Russians tolerate it? Really? I don't think they will try to occupy the whole Ukraine, so I don't think they will mind. Will they set up a buffer zone? What the hell does a buffer zone mean in Ukraine? Between Ukraine and Romania, there's no buffer zone. There's no need for that. That's a ridiculous notion in any case. Will NATO send to go and defend Odessa and use it as a tripwire? Well, again, the Americans are not idiots. The Ukrainians are not idiots. If they think that there's a tripwire for the Russians to occupy Odessa because there are American soldiers there, that is a risky, and that the Russians won't take that risk. The same risk applies to the Americans. If Russia doesn't want to make war against NATO and consider that as a risk, just remember, the Americans have the same problem. Do they want to risk a war with Russia? This is not a one-sided issue. It's a sword that cuts both ways. So the same rules applies to the one that applies to the other one. And because they have both nuclear weapons and have huge armies. And the result, the consequences of such a conflict is for both of them devastating. So nobody wants to escalate. Nobody. So this whole story about NATO wants to do, America wants to do this, America wants to join the war, America wants to send troops. Come on. Oh yeah, and I've actually forgot. So supposedly there were 7,000 mercenaries originally when the start of the SMO. And then the Russians said that so many thousand were left and so many were killed and so on. And I think there were about 1,700 mercenaries killed. But on the daily reports, consistently, mercenaries are being killed. 200 foreign fighters are being killed. 300 foreign fighters are being killed. Consistently. Come on. When is this? It's like Hollywood with their guns when the bullets they never run out of bullets. Seems to me like the same effect here. Every day. Nope. Doesn't work like that. Because Brian and Andrei also talked about the mercenaries that are being lost. And Polish mercenaries, and and now American mercenaries, and NATO troops disguised as mercenaries. And, well, if the NATO has trained Ukrainians for 8 years, then surely these troops must be accustomed to using some of the NATO equipment. I mean, they had 8 years of training in that, apart from tactics and etc. and etc. So people, wake up, change your narrative, see the facts on the ground, and start making better comments about the whole situation. Well, that's my story for today. Please subscribe, spread the word, share the link, and until next time, cheers.